Sees the resolution, it doesn't show
The
it.
resolution is like yesterday.
Yeah. Usually the way I do this kind of things is that I give sort of a brief overview of my sort of career or work, and after that I really would love for us to have a conversation about things and you asking me questions, and often that, I would like to see, where your areas of interest are rather than me just giving a monologue of 2 hours. So I think it's the interaction really has my preference basically. And I don't know how much of you already saw, trailers and clips of my work, so I don't want to double too much that you already have seen. But I'll give you a few very short and brief clips of some of the pieces I've done and tell you a little bit about it, and then after that we can maybe have a conversation about it. All right, so I had a bit of a strange route in my career. I started off as a sound engineer, recording engineer. I studied, on a conservatory in The Hague, you can do an engineering study which sort of combines musical courses with technical courses. So they train you to be a recording producer, either classical or jazz and pop. And that's like a 4-year study that I did, and so during that study you get all the sort of musical courses, the theory, you play an instrument, you get solfège, but also you learn about acoustic, about math, so it's a very sort of technical study combined with musical study, which for me is the ideal combination. During that period I was already composing for myself. But because of the music engineering study, I became quite fluent with audio editing and just listening, training my ears and listening to a lot of music and balancing microphones and sort of learning how to listen really. I recorded a lot of contemporary music. I started my own company and we recorded for basically all the major labels. Together with a friend, but after a while I felt like something was missing in my life, and I just didn't want to be a recording engineer for the rest of my life, and I kind of missed the creative side of things, and so I decided to apply for the composition studies in The Hague as well, and to my big surprise got accepted, and so that's how my composing career started. I was already quite a bit older because I've done the other study. Quite from early on I always have been very interested in the visual side of things. So my very early works already had notes in the score about the way the musicians should look like, the way they should behave on stage, some lighting settings. So the sort of theater element was already there from the beginning, and I experimented with I did a piece called Wake for 2 percussionists, and they have an identical setup, identical group of instruments, but one of them only mimes, never touches his instruments. And they do this duet, one of them only visually and the other one only audibly. And if you see someone almost hitting a large drum, in your head you imagine, you fill in the sound basically. So there was a sort of a research piece for me to see how I can combine, in a very conceptual way, combine the visual information with musical information. And I've done things like pieces with a small Sony cassette player, for example a piece called Memo, where the violinist records him or herself in the beginning and then plays back the recording and then plays together their own recording. And there's a lot of rewinding and a lot of virtuosic sort of tape recorder playing. And also this is for me an interesting theatrical layer, because you as an audience understand how recording works on a cassette player. You're all way too young to have used cassette players, but I'm still old enough to have used them. But you understand, the rewinding and the play and the record buttons, and so it makes it sort of a very primal sampling tool almost. And if the violinist makes a mistake, then 3 minutes later he or she has to deal with that mistake and sort of I love the psychology behind it, basically. So after this visual element became more and more important, I wanted to use film and I wanted to use video in my work, and I wanted to do it properly. So I took a year off and went to New York to study film at the New York Film Academy, and I did this 1-year crash course basically where you rotate, you learn, you know, in a very high intense period, all the positions in the film crew. So you learn how to handle a camera, and in my time they still had sort of the old ARRI black and white film, 60mm film cameras. So we shot on that, and we got a permit to shoot in Hull, Manhattan, so we could go to all these amazing places and shoot our stuff there. So already from the first week you're on the streets and filming stuff. And failing miserably and learning from that, and so it's a very high speed learning curve. And so we basically rotated through the crew. So you do you direct the film, you do the camera, you gaffer, you do the lighting, and you do editing. And we did editing on the old Steenbeck sort of reel-to-reel tape recorders, and later on also in Premiere and Final Cut Pro. So in that year I noticed that there's a lot of parallels between filmmaking and composing. I mean, you deal with time, you deal with phrasing in time, and the editing of film I found very similar to the editing of music in a way. And when I came back, I decided to do my first project with this. I decided to do an opera, and I called it Opera One. And it's an opera for this amazing soprano, Barbara Hannigan, who at that time was still quite unknown, but now she's quite famous. I wanted to do again quite a conceptual piece where I use her image on the film, on 2 film screens. I created an alter ego for her, and she sort of they finish each other's sentences, movements, and I really wanted to sort of look inside of the head of the protagonist and split it out into a video alter ego and a live performer. And also in the soundtrack, there's only electronic sounds. You hear her voice and you hear editings of her voice and the sound of a breaking branch, which became sort of an icon in my music. It's in almost every piece, because I think it's sort of a logo of my work. Yes, to have the analog sound, but also I think a breaking branch sounds very electronic, like a spark almost, and I love the theatricality of it. And I think there's a sort of primal instinct in our heads when we hear a breaking branch that we fear danger, like a wild animal approaching us in a forest or something. I think it's very deep in our consciousness. So I'll show you a little clip of one to get an idea of one of my first music theater works. Maybe we can kill the lights actually to. I use very little material. It's really about how can I divide the material between the video alter ego and the live alter ego, and how far can I push this to become this really abstract new language, basically. So this was still very low budget. I mean, we pretty much produced everything ourselves, got sponsor deals with the camera company, and managed to do this for quite a low amount of money. Having done this, I got the chance to do a slightly larger opera, and I made the opera Afterlife for Dutch National Opera, which was for a cast of 8 singers, an orchestra, and again with film. And Afterlife is based upon a Japanese film by Koreeda. It's a wonderful film about a place between heaven and earth, where people that die, they go there and they enter, and there's staff that helps them sort of sift through their lives, through the memories of their lives, and they have to pick one defining moment in their lives. And once they've chosen this moment, it's filmed locally by a crew, and they go to a little cinema and they see their own moment back, and they sort of continue to live in that moment forever and ever. So this is sort of that sense of heaven or hell if you choose a bad moment. I recommend you checking out this film. It's a beautiful film, a Japanese film, Afterlife. What we did is we made sort of a more European version of it, and I used real life stories of people. I basically set out an audition and I asked people to come, English speaking people to come to the audition, and we had the camera rolling and then we sat them down in a chair and we asked them, you know, if you would have to choose now, what is the most important, what is the most defining moment in your life? And this material we used in the opera. So part of it I wrote out and I gave to the singers, and part of it we have as almost documentary style inserts in the opera. Another thing is that it was designed by Dries Verhoeven, and we decided to make this on stage to make this railway station. We have a large conveyor belt, about 20 meters, where furniture passes by through the opera. So people, almost like the memories of the people that died, they come by on the furniture belt, the conveyor belt, and they walk through it and they pick up things, and it becomes more and more empty as the people choose their memories. And then we have these two glass walls that ride alongside the furniture belt, and they are this special material that can change between glass and projection surface. So we could do the rear projected, so we could do scenes behind the glass, and then suddenly the video switches on and the video sort of takes over. So we use them as sort of magnifying glasses to go over the furniture and sort of magnify the moments, the memories behind the furniture, basically. I show you a short trailer. Because we had the moving screens. I don't know if you saw it in the clip, but these were like very expensive glass windows that broke all the time and had to be replaced, and sort of didn't work in shows. And it was one of the worst moments in my career was when we had the revision of the piece in 2009, and we were in the main house. I was in the middle of the hall, in between all the press, and suddenly the screams came up and there was no video on the screens, only sound, and I had to sort of get up, leave the audience, go to the stage and stop the show and say, you know, walk on with the microphone and say, I'm sorry, but I think I'm not dreaming, but this is actually happening, and we have to start over again. So that's the downside of using this much technology. I mean, things can break and will break, and you know, tonight and tomorrow everything will be fine, I assure you. Yes, so then I mean, I don't only do opera works, I do pieces that are sort of in between a concert piece and a musical theatre piece. So I wrote this cello concerto called Up Close. In Up Close there's I split the stage in two halves. On one half is the string orchestra and the soloist, and the other half there's a screen, a film screen. And on the film screen you see the exact same setting as the orchestra, so there's the chairs and the desks of the musicians. But in the place of the soloist there's an elderly woman. Looks a lot like the soloist, maybe an older version, maybe herself a lot later. And we start playing with the sort of the mirrored reality of the musicians and in the film. So there's moments where the cellist crosses the stage and moves into the sort of film area. She walks with an antique lamp, and there's all these sort of more abstract links between the film part and the musical part. I'll show you a little clip. This is it's about 30 minutes this piece, and if you want to watch it all, it's on my YouTube channel, so you can watch the entire piece there. Then I started working on another opera called Sunken Garden, and in this opera I collaborated with a British novelist, David Mitchell. You might know him from his book Cloud Atlas, which was also a Hollywood film actually. And we got the idea to write this piece about, again, about the place between heaven and earth, but this time an evil place where people are sort of kept against their will, and they're being used, sort of a sci-fi opera, being used as batteries for someone who wants to gain eternal life. So we got the idea to make this place on stage to use 3D film, this was my first attempt to use 3D film on stage. Blank Eye was actually the second attempt. So we had to figure that out ourselves because it hadn't been done before. What I wanted to do is because 3D film has this volume, you can use the depth of the film, to have like a huge screen on the back of the stage and film characters in 3D that were there as holograms on stage and mixing with the actual singer. So what we could do is have someone in 3D almost standing in front of someone who is there physically on stage, and they interact with each other and they have a relationship together. And I'll show you a little clip later of a scene where there was this pond, this vertical pond, and someone comes from the pond and her movements of her arms sort of react the water behind her to splash over her and over the heads of the audience. And so it was a very it was a way to really really combine the physical space on stage and the space in the film. And the difficulty was that it has so much to do with scale. So if someone is like 1 meter more to the front or to the end of the stage, somehow the relationships didn't work anymore, and the person in the film became a midget or a giant, and so we had to do all these very complicated maneuvers on stage in order to keep the ratios of the people intact. And so that was a super learning experience. We managed to do the opera in a few places, tour it a little bit, and I did a quite highly revision in 2000. I can't remember, 13 I think. Oh no, 15 of it. And basically what I learned in Sunken Garden I tried to do different in Blank Out. So there was, in a way, Blank Out is a much more smaller scale, but a much more humanized version of the technology we used in Sunken Garden. I show you a short scene so to get an idea about the interaction. Do I have it? Yes. So this is the scene with the pond that I was talking about. Now it looks 2D because you can't see the 3D aspect, but you have to realize that this garden basically in 3D sort of stuck out. So the singers are really within the plants and within the environment, and all the reactions in the water in the pond sort of go over them. So the singers are really embedded in the film image here. And actually, this is Kate Manley, and she also sings tonight and tomorrow in Blank Out. This mosquito is this giant monster that of course went over the stage. Yes, so this was quite a massive production in terms of the budget and in terms of the complications of things, because a 3D film shoot is quite expensive, and we had to do a lot of testing. How to scale people in the recording. So we had to sort of make a scale model of the set and have a 3D television in it on the film shoot itself. So the little puppets of the singers, I can already see if the shot we were making would work in real life. Especially this ratio between the live singers and the film, that was the most complicated thing, and yeah, that was a big challenge with this piece.
And the audience watched with
yeah, 3D glasses, like tonight
glasses.
and like tomorrow. You will have 3D glasses as well. Yeah.
Okay.
What's the name of the one?
Secret Garden.
Sunken Garden.
Sunken.
Sunken Garden. Yeah. Yes. So, do I have internet here? Not sure if this is going to work, if the internet's fast enough here, but another project, sort of a new step for me was to do like a fully digital project, and I was asked by the Holland Festival and Google Cultural Institute to make a interactive song cycle for a website, basically, that was launched during the Holland Festival in 2015. I wanted to work with Kate Miller-Heidke again. She's also in Sunken Garden. She plays one of the roles in Sunken Garden. And she's also in a new project that I will tell you about later on, a VR project that I'm doing. What I wanted to do is make a sort of an interactive song cycle that you could navigate through yourself. So what we did is I found these wonderful stories of Borges, the writer Borges, and his work already has a lot of sort of hyperlinks within one story to another story, and in a way it's almost like a preview of the internet, the way the internet works. And I wanted to make a narrative that you could move through in 3 layers, and that are sort of all related, and you have to sort of actively find sort of the relationship and the story between these 3 worlds. So what I did is we recorded the video with 3 alter egos of Kate, basically, of Kate Miller-Heidke. And the music, her singing part is the same in each layer, but the music is different. So one of the layers is sort of abstract electronics, one of the layers is a cappella choir, and one of the layers is a pop music layer. So once you swift through, you hear the voice you hear that the voice stays the same, but the actual music changes. I'm not sure if it's going to work, if the internet is fast enough, but I'll give it a shot. So basically you can navigate by clicking on the 3 circles or using the arrow keys on your keyboard. But you can the website is still live. It's called thebookofsand.net, and you can still go there. It's free. There's also an app for iOS called Book of Sand. If you look in the iTunes store, it's also a free app, and you can do it on your iPad or on your iPhone, which is even nicer, the interaction. Let's try. So I switch the layers with my arrow keys now, middle one, top one.
It's true, I never leave my house, but it's also true that it's doors whose numbers are infinite, are open day and night. Like the red mountain child, I run through the stone galleries until I fall dizzy to the floor. I crouch in the shadow of a pool around a corner and pretend I'm
The audio stuff is here a little because of the internet connection, but normally it's a very fluent thing. You can try it at home, and it's a 12-minute cycle basically. You go through, and yeah, you can see new things with every combination you make. Basically, it's all related. It's 3 worlds that are very much interacting with each other. The Book of Sand.net. Yes, I will wrap it up. So basically, another step for me, the latest step I'm working on is a virtual reality installation piece, and that will be premiering this June. We're still very much creating it right now. With Kate again. So what will happen is the visitors will go in one by one with a VR headset, and you're completely free of wires, so you can walk freely through the space. And it's a combination of a virtual space and a physical space. So you see your hands digitally, you can touch things, you can touch the walls, you can sort of trigger things by touching elements, and you're in there for about 15 minutes and make this journey and come out again, and then the next person goes in basically. So I'll show you a little trailer of it. Teaser on.
It's really cool seeing this exciting new technology kind of bring this piece of art to life.
It is a highly individual 15-minute experience through this imaginary space.
It's an entirely new art form really that we're all being part of creating.
So, yeah, it's still very much being created right now. We have a few technical hurdles to take. It's very difficult to, I mean, we basically have to test every step with an audience, because since you can walk freely, there's this one protagonist that takes you to her space. It starts with an elderly lady, and she sort of, we go back in her life, so she changes into 30-something-year-old woman, and then in the end she changes into an 8-year-old girl. But we want the audience to follow this woman, and so we have to find out, you know, does everybody understand at any point that you have to follow her, what you need to do without being obviously, you know, pointing to things or, you know, winking all the time. So this whole user experience is something we have to test with sort of a clean audience every time and see how they react, and write down their results and tweak according to it. Which is a very interesting new process for me, because I haven't done anything this uncommercial in a way, because it's like 4 visitors in an hour we can house, so it's not a lot of people can see it. So we have to basically sit it for a few weeks in a festival, and it's like a museum installation almost, where you need 2 ushers to help the audience with the glasses and to explain it to them, and so it's a completely different concept for me, and very interesting to do really. So what you saw in the teaser is we record all the movements of the characters with a special suit, an accent suit, and this data, you saw the little stick puppets moving on the computer screen, so that's sort of the data of all the movements. And then at the end of the clip you saw this white space with all the cameras. We take like a 360 photo of everyone. So we have sort of the outside, the body itself. There's a company who works for weeks to make of these photos, make a little skeleton in the digital person. So you can actually move and animate this image, and the movement information of the suit, you know, will be combined with that photo. So we then have the actual body moving. And then we had a camera on the face, so all the movements and emotions of the face and the singing is recorded as well, and is then projected digitally in the 3D model basically. So it gives a very highly realistic image. And another thing we do is we build it in a gaming engine in Unity, so the character actually always know where you as an audience are. So we are programming the eyes that the eyes keep focused on you. So if you step aside, she keeps looking at you, which is a very strange experience, I have to say. So it feels very, very, sort of, you know it's not real, but it's still you feel sort of a connection to this character because you know she's based upon a real person basically and not on a computer puppet. And there's also a choir in there, so there's one moment where they sort of are around you and you hear them in 360 audio, and when you move closer into one of the choir members, this choir member sounds louder. So it's also a very immersive experience, and you go through a cave, you're on the top of a tree house, or under a table, so you make this entire journey in 15 minutes. So I think it's going to be quite special, I hope. So yeah, that's my latest project, basically. So this is a little arc of the flavors of my work. So maybe we can do some questions and.
Your Film Academy film. So I was wondering, do you every time get to learn also these new technologies, or you just come with an idea and then you find these amazing tech people who help you out?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Actually. So I work with the company for this piece. They're of course specialized in VR, and I need them because I didn't know anything about VR. But when I do a project like this, I do a lot of research. So I want to know. I don't want to program it, but I do want to know everything about it, about what's possible, what's not possible. And normally, what I want to do is never possible. People always say no, sorry, Michelle, we can't do it. And then I wait a little bit, and then in the end, there comes a solution to actually do it. So in this case, most of the VR projects are, you're on a wire connected to the computer, and you sit on one place and you can look around, but that's about it. And now in the US, they have a few places where you can actually walk around with a backpack and a laptop. It's called The Void, and you can be a Star Trooper in Star Wars and have some more game-like experiences. But what I wanted to do is another step, basically free from wires, but also interacting physically with the space. Because you see your hands, you see this curved hallway with cloth, and you can actually touch it in VR, but also feel it in real life. And when you push it and release it, it sort of ripples, and the music ripples and resonates in the surface as well. So it's a very, very tactile experience, which makes it much more like you belong to that space, to the digital world, basically. And all these things we have to figure out. Also the company I work with hasn't done it, so we do tests. The way to do it really is we started this project about 1.5 years ago, and we did like a sprint, a workshop week, and we just focused on the touching of the material. And then another few months later, we did another test and to walk around without wires. And so we took it in steps, and there's a lot of time between these steps. The complication of this is how do you find money to do this? And so we started a foundation, and AA Foundation, and it has sort of one of the key points of the foundation is AA Lab, and with the AA Lab, we basically we try and apply for money from subsidy to try things without it necessarily having a concrete performance yet. So it's like really an experimental phase where we can do stuff which might or might not go to a performance. This is how we did the first steps with this project. So we got some money kindly from a Dutch subsidy, not a lot, but enough to do these weeks to pay everybody and to do research really, because only then you can see what the actual budget needs to be, because you don't know yet which technology you're going to use, which is always difficult with these kind of things. You always think of something, and if you budget it and you start doing it, you run into things, and things will become more expensive or need to go a completely different way. To give a concrete example, we planned to do this with backpacks, but then we found out that all the stuff we want to do, even the fastest laptops are not fast enough to create the visual power to do it. So now we had to find another solution, and we worked together with HTC, the maker of the Vive Pro, these glasses, and they have a new technology, a wireless technology that we're beta testing for them basically, and now we can have a very powerful PC just transferring the information to the glasses via wireless connection. So now we can have the content that we want, and we have even more freedom because you don't have the thing on your back. Another example is to have the backpack on your back. There's a moment where you're under a table, and I wrote the script and I didn't realize that with a backpack on your back, it's very difficult to sit under a table. I mean, these stupid things you don't think about, and then you do a test with an audience and think, fuck, that's a problem. So, you know, these are things you need to do while workshopping, really.
So I guess also the script adapts according to
Yeah,
the
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I want to be that flexible, you know, so because in the when you do these new things, some things might not work at all, and sometimes you run into something which is so beautiful that you want to implement it in a way. So, yeah, so these are usually quite long arcs of production, so you have enough time to adjust and adapt, really.
everything else was clear in your
Yeah.
I was wondering about the librettos
Mhm.
of could you please elaborate
In general, or of this?
and from the ones you already showed to us?
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, the first thing I showed you, I wrote the text myself, which, I mean, it is almost a sort of collage of poems and theoretical and medical text, and it's sort of a very abstract, almost one page of text that I only used as a sound source, and not to create meaning or to give a like clearly arc. It's more like a dream-like or nightmare-like sound source, really. With Blankout, the opera that you see now, the text is based on Ingrid Jonker, a wonderful South African poet. She lived in the 60s, and she was very important for the anti-apartheid movement. She was an important feminist. She sadly also suffered from bipolar disease, and she killed herself. She drowned herself when she was 32. So the opera is loosely based on her life story, but also uses her poetry a lot. So it's sort of, I use that as a fundament, and then I sort of create my own narrative out of it. So it doesn't completely follow her life, but it's sort of based upon events in her life and the drowning and a drowning. The Sunken Garden, it was very concrete. David Mitchell wrote the libretto. I mean, we worked on it together, but then I had a libretto and I started to set that onto music. I found out that in the end that's not my strength, so I'm better if I have more influence over the text, because I control so many of the layers that if I have to do a narrative arc, it's just not my forte. I learned, and so with Blankout, I like if there's you need some sort of arc, but I don't want a very clear storyline because I'm not good at it. I'm much better in sort of creating slightly more abstract, associative storylines, basically.
So
No.
which really comes first? Is it the text, the music, the media? Or
That was my question.
Um,
You start from the music.
Often the text is there first when I do an opera, but when I write an opera, I write the layers in parallel. So I write the music and immediately write the film script, because so I write an aria for an opera, and I work in 3 lines. I think, okay, this is the singer, this is the text she's singing, but what's happening? What is the situation on stage? Is there film? In what way is the film extending the staging? So in that way, I can really, for each scene, balance the 3 layers. And sometimes it's just music, and sometimes it's just film, and I can really decide as to the libretto, as to the content, what I need. One of these layers needs to be front, or one of the layers needs to be back. And I think that's sort of my in a way that's an advantage of over sort of composing something, giving it to a director and a film director, and then they have to sort of do something with that. I can already one step earlier sort of decide upon the weight of these 3 layers basically. Yeah, but it's also a weakness in a way because it's all in my head, so I need to make sure that I have enough people in the artistic team that ask me difficult questions and give me push back. So that's important for me to have a great dramaturg or and a set designer and a lighting designer and a assistant director and the conductor, and they're all very much involved usually from the beginning. So I really see it as a great, a group process in a way. Because if I only think of it at home, it becomes such a closed world that I might make mistakes that other people immediately see. So yeah. And also for 8, for example, there are 2 young dramaturgs. They just graduated from the university in Amsterdam, and I asked them to when I started thinking about this piece, to research infinity. Every text I could find on infinity, out of copyright. And they came with all this poetry and this theoretical text, and from that we started combining things and making these songs, really, the song text basically. So that's then the starting point for me, which is very much related to the idea of the piece, the infinity, the cyclic thing of life, but still has enough abstract level not to be able to, if someone sings something, you don't want to see it at the same time, you don't want to Mickey Mouse the action of the text, so then it needs to be a separate sort of abstract layer in a way. Yeah, so that and this is also for my new opera, my upcoming opera. I work with the same dramaturgs, and I really like it because that they're there from the beginning, and the 3 of us we think about the narrative skeleton. We write down all these scenes and sub-scenes on A4 paper and put them on the floor and start mixing them until they feel like it's the right arc. Then we make timings of them, and then we see, oh no, this is a 16-hour opera, we need to cut half of it, a tenth of it. So that's how the skeleton of the piece happens, and then we start looking for text of the actual content. So we go from very large to much smaller.
So you managed to make a complicated score. It covers the 3 layers: the music, libretto,
I can see I can have
filmic action, the stage action.
Yeah.
That you can communicate to your collaborators.
Yes.
You think?
See if I can find one here. It's difficult to see, but so the scores have the music, but also a staff for the soundtrack, for the electronic sounds, and a staff for the films, and it contains film stills. So sometimes there are things very much connected to the actions in the music, and the film often is very closely cut to the music. Let's see. When I use film, there's someone in the orchestra that triggers the film on the music. So we have special software to basically edit the film live on the music. Yeah. So the scores always have these 3 layers in there, and often also staging ideas, and you get the idea. And if there's click track, I mean, I try to avoid click track as much as I can. So the electronics and the film often sort of work with the elasticity of the conductor, and it can be edited in real time. Yeah. So that's how I try to do it, and I do the offline editing of my film things myself, because I need to really time it and on the music, and then I leave to a company to do the online and special effects and stuff like that.
Sorry. I just realized that also what we watch, like the documentation of the performance is quite like much directed somehow. So are you interested in also like the documentation can be a film itself somehow that also includes like the action on stage and the video?
Yeah, I think, you know, as makers now, we have to, in a way, we have to maybe compete with Netflix and compete with all these other things that weren't there last century, you know, and I think this, if I talk to David Mitchell, the novelist, he says, you know, since Netflix, it's so much more difficult to, or since the invention of film really, it's so much, the way novels are written have really changed. And I think the same is true for the stage arts. I think we have to sort of adopt the language in order to still connect to an audience now, you know, an audience that's very much, you know, connected to their smartphones and to binge watching, to the idea of events in time is completely changed because of it, of non-linear TV, you know, and I think a piece like the Book of Sam, like the interactive song cycle, is very much in a way trying to connect to that mentality. And also the way we present pieces like the trailer you saw of Ace, I want to make sure that, you know, we do 1 minute clips that, you know, work on Instagram, and so because we need to get the audience interested, and often the audience that goes to these pieces are not necessarily a new music audience, it's sort of normal audience, you know, or like, you know, people like you who are interested in other art forms. And I think once the piece is made, it's you, as a maker, you have to do everything you can to get the audience interested and to get publicity there, and so this is also something I try and think about and take into account.
But your goal is not to actually produce another film that kind of is the documentation. I mean. Yeah, I mean for the clip you saw of Up Close, the cello concerto, it's also a DVD. So once we release it onto a medium, then I usually make a registration, which is slightly different than the actual performance. Because otherwise it's very difficult to capture these things. With the 3D, I guess it's very hard to work.
Yeah.
So if you do like.
In a way, I mean, Blank Out, you know, is one of my more successful pieces, but it's very difficult to do a registration of it because of this, the 3D element, and it's such an intimate thing, and you have to really experience it in the hall almost. And so if I do a registration of it or a recording of it, I need to really almost restage it and make a translation of it, basically. Yeah. But I mean, working with images on stage, it's nice if it works, but it's also quite a dangerous thing, because if you have something, moving image playing, everybody starts watching and stops listening. And so one of the things I constantly think about, or I struggle with, is how can I make sure that the image doesn't shout the music or overshout the staging, and how can I now balance that in a good way. So, and this is what I talked about earlier. When I create the scenes, I already have to make decisions about that. So I'd rather have a filmic scene play out completely with, you know, without any music or without any singers really involved, and then go back to the stage action and put the film much more on the background, or like a tableau vivant, or like a, you know, more like a frozen frame, and yeah, sort of change that rather than trying to do that all in parallel. Yeah. Come on, I'm sure you have questions.
How much does it take? Like, how long does it take to really set up this, like, every time you tour? How much does it take to stage the whole thing in a new theater? Or?
Yeah, for example, here, yeah, we got in on, when did I get in? I think Wednesday evening. So it's Friday, Saturday today. So Thursday they got in and they built the set. Yesterday we did our first stage rehearsal, and we have another technical rehearsal today, and that's it. It's very tight. I mean, because there's a lot of technology. And when we arrived yesterday, there's a 3D camera moving on a table, and the motor of the dolly didn't work anymore. I mean, this stuff happens when you transport things. And so we had to fix it first, and then there was a few hour delay, and everything gets squashed in. And, yeah, but it's I mean, it's you know, we travel with 9 people, so the shorter we can do it, otherwise it's like impossible to afford it for a stage to do it. And yeah, this opera it's only 1 singer, but there's 9 technicians traveling with it, so it's still a big group for a solo opera, basically. Yeah.
How long does the whole production to be completed from the idea
Uh-huh.
to the end? How long does it take?
Yeah, so Blackout took me, I think, 2 years to do. But then before that, I already had the idea. I sort of started thinking about the idea, and usually the composing takes the most time. So with Blackout, it took me maybe a year to compose, and then we do the film shoot after the composing, and then I have to edit the film, and we have to do the special effects or whatever, and then build the staging, and then so it's. For an opera, usually it's like 1.5 years of very intensive work, and before that, at least half a year of preparation and pre-production, and depending on the length of the opera. Red arrows on the floor, like my mother has to be able to go through. You know, if she can go through, everything will work for everyone, I think. So we have to, yeah, we have to build in these levels of guidance, I think, and there's this time-based. You know, if there's an interaction planned and people don't interact, then we have to say, okay, after 10 seconds, if they haven't touched the wall, then just move on and trigger the next event, stuff like that. Yeah, so it's but you need to test this with an audience. So we have, again, before we premiere, we have a few days planned with just people that don't know what they're getting into, and we have 2 people that have questionnaires. In the end, when people get out, what did you see, and we can also monitor what they see and what they miss. And if 9 out of 10 people miss a certain interaction, then we know, okay, this is not designed well and this is not clear for them. And yeah. All right.
I have a question. Where do you get your ideas from? I mean, is it personal? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
you read something, you remember something, you see something, all together.
I'm a fairly happy person, I think. When my mom saw one, the first thing I saw, she sort of turned around and said, "Are you okay?" I am actually. Maybe I'm okay because I make these dark pieces. No, yeah.
Is it too psychoanalytical?
Yeah, no, I have been. I mean, I'm interested. I would say I'm a humanist, so I'm definitely interested in the human, sort of the human condition and the human perspective, rather than big sort of social themes or So my operas are always sort of a very individual, humanistic perspective, like afterlife, like choosing that memory. So memory is a very important element in my work. This place between heaven and earth. If you are able to look back on your life, how do you look back on your life, basically? And a few of my operas are about that situation, basically. And the sort of the cyclic thing of life is very interesting. There's always generations in my works. There's always often an elderly version of a young version, and sometimes they mix. Also with age, very literal. There's 3 ages of the same person, of the protagonist, and in a way, 8, the infinity symbol. Also in the installation, you end at the exact same place as the beginning, and there's in the walls of the hallways there are like these hieroglyphs. Is that a word? This like the and you end with almost like an embryotic image of the girl in the wall that you then touch again, and then you're out. So it's this memory membrane that you go through, and that you sort of are with the woman, and you help her trigger these memories and sort of move on, or more actually move back in her life. So that's something that sort of interests me, and from a humanist perspective, really.
Have you decided on your moment? at the moment?
Ooh, yeah. It changes a little bit all the time. When I did the opera, one of my favorite moments, my defining moments was, I mean, it's a moment that you have to be, you realize that you'll be stuck in for eternity. Yeah? So, when I was a kid, I lived in the north of Holland, and we, on Saturdays, normally my mom used to bake pancakes in the evening. You know, pancakes? Like that. And I remember one day where it was the beginning of the summer holiday, and we had like 6 weeks of holiday, which is like eternity for a child. And it was in the beginning, and this whole holiday was still ahead of me, and we were playing hide and seek with my sister and the neighbor kids. And I was hidden behind my favorite tree hiding spot, and I was smelling the pancakes from the kitchen, and I knew that the holiday would last for 6 more weeks, and I thought, okay, that was utter and ultimate happiness. Yeah, so that would be a good moment. Yeah. But I think it's interesting for everyone to think about that, and I think it changes all the time. Yeah, very tough one. And this is also what we see in the opera. The people that we actually interviewed, some of them really struggle to find one moment because they have so many highlights, and some of them have no highlights, and sort of realize, shit, I wish I could redo my life again and make the decisions that I'm really passionate about. So that kind of way of living in the now and getting the most out of life, which was the underlying theme of Afterlife, really. And also some stories were really quite touching. There was one woman talking about her trip. It was in the Second World War, and she was fleeing the country with her parents for Nazi Germany, and she went to the US and lived in New York until she was like 13, and then the war was over and she got back onto this boat, and the boat was entering Holland again, and she saw the dikes and the trees and the people on the dikes, and she thought, this is where I belong. And that's her moment. That's the moment she tells on the boat. So in the opera we filmed this with her, and this really silly, the green carpet for the dike and the little boat. But then when you see it on 8mm film at the end of the opera and the projector, it's very touching. So these moments are also life stories. Especially the moments that work up, the arcs that work up to these decisions that are interesting. And the 9-year-old boy, shows his dog. So it's all these different levels of a moment with his dog. And there was this South African woman, Tessa, and her defining moment was sort of leaving South Africa when things were going really bad, and she would have a big sense of guilt about it. And then, years later, she got back, and she was going back to her area and to the tribe that lives in her area. And she was hugged by a woman by a campfire of the tribe, and she sort of felt welcomed back and sort of reconnected to the land, and that was her moment. So very deep, very intense decisions. And this is exactly where I want opera to be at, because as an audience you immediately relate to it. You start thinking yourself when you go home, what would I choose? And that kind of interaction, I think I'm looking for in my work. Once I have people still having questions after the opera, and not everything should be answered, and sort of should rework in your head, then I'm happy. So, and I think the blank out will be the same. Not every question gets answered. You'll still have to. There's some questions you'll still have, but hopefully you'll be, you feel connected to the woman on stage, and yeah.
Something more. I'm continuing about this immersive experience. I was thinking about these different kinds of immersive experience. For example, in a normal theater room, the audience is somehow in a safe position. He's in the dark, he's sitting, he can forget, she can leave her body behind and fully immerse in the world of the play, somehow with the mind. In the VR environment, of course, it is literally, he is literally immersed. But from some experiences that I had in gaming or other art works with using VR glasses, you have a bodily experience. You cannot leave your body outside and fully
Yeah.
go around this place, because you have to struggle with finding your way in a completely different space
Yeah.
from the natural one.
Yeah.
So I read also that there have been years ago some studies on how to design special chairs for VR experiences. That means that you still have the safety of being stable somewhere and can freely go around through the virtual space.
Right. Yeah, I mean, VR has been around for a long time already, and it has been going up and died, and going up and died, and now we are in another wave. And for me as a maker, it's very exciting because I can really, you can really manipulate the surroundings, and you can do something that you can't do in the theater. But there's also still a limitation of the hardware, really. What you can do. It very often it's very difficult to avoid sort of a game-like surrounding, in terms of graphic design, it's not sort of photorealistic yet. So you kind of have to play a little bit with that. And for me, the experience of sitting in a chair and watching around was a little bit boring. There's a lot of, everybody does VR these days, and there's orchestras that let you sit next to the conductor in the orchestra, or in dance performances you can sit on stage and watch the dancers around you. These are all fun for me at least, for 5 minutes, and then I think, okay, but now I want to get up and stand behind someone and move. And so this is really the thing that drove me to want to do it wirelessly, and I want people to actually physically make that journey. And in order to do that safely, you need to have boundaries, and these boundaries are tactile. So you can also they're not only boundaries, but you need them to trigger things. And on the other hand, people have to sign a disclaimer when they go in, because if someone runs one direction, you will hurt yourself. You will run off. But there's no way you can avoid it unless you play incredibly safe, and I don't want to do that. So if you stay on the path in VR, you're fine. There's one moment where you're on a mountain, and there's a drop of 30 meters, and when we put a fence there, but also there's a fence physically, so you can actually touch the fence physically. But if you look over, I have fear of heights. I really feel like, I don't want to go there. But if someone ignores it and runs there, just to see what happens, then we have a problem. So that's why we need a disclaimer. Definitely, if we want to do it in the US, there's no way we can otherwise perform it in public. Holland is fine, you can hurt people, it's fine.
Here as well, I mean.
I don't know yet what the result will be. I like it myself, but maybe an audience is completely alienated by it, or is too scared to move around, or is too. I think there will be a lot of information. You walk through quite quickly, and you walk through all these different environments quite quickly. You can't see everything, you have to follow this woman through this, otherwise you lose her. She waits for you a little bit, but not too long. And what do we do if she's around the corner and the person's still there, All these, it's a very different way of making something, because you suddenly have to take into account all these different types of audience, and the audience that wants to just, fuck the system and see where it can go wrong, or ones that very politely walks, and so that's basically in between that should function.
You could have different versions for older people and the younger people, gamers.
I'm late, and the whole day of slots, all these very silly logistical questions we have to deal with. We have two systems. What if one system fails and you can't overlap anymore? And how are you going to deal with the delays that you get? And so it's a whole adventure, really.
Will you bring it here as well?
Sophia.
Yeah, Sophia? Will you bring it here?
The thing is, it's not. I think the most expensive thing is the people that you put in to help the audience. The actual building of it and the hardware and stuff. The rental is not that expensive. But it's the people that have to be there and help the audience. So it would fit a place that already has that structure, like a museum or a concert hall with ushers. You know, if you have that infrastructure there, then it's very easy to implement it.
When will it be ready? When?
I hope in June, because then it's a premiere. But we're just we're in Holland in June, and then we go to Aix-en-Provence in July, and Beijing in October, and Germany next year, Helsinki this time. So that's the travel basically. Yeah. And hopefully, I mean, I'm sure we'll learn a lot from that first block in the Holland Festival, and probably have to adjust things, and so it will be an evolving piece.
Can I ask you something? When you wear the mask, you wear a mask in 8, right?
Yeah.
Can you see your body? Because normally when you wear the bear mask, it's like you're a floating head. You look down and you don't see your feet, you don't see your hands.
Yeah, but still, you can see your arms and your hands, but not your feet and your yeah. And we thought about, but basically you have to add sensors to the feet, then otherwise the computer doesn't know where your feet are. So it's another 2 layers of data that is just too much to process. But there's a little there's an extra thing on your glasses that track your hands, and it's quite. I mean, even your finger movements, it's very fluid. But it's indeed strange that you don't see your own feet. You sort of float. There's no real way we can solve it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean the test that we did with touching the surface is already quite magical, I have to say. So that's even without any of the storyline. So it's just very cool to push the wall and then see it ripple. And you know, it's a very simple thing, but somehow very fulfilling to do it. Yeah.
You wear the gloves, or
No.
you can touch the physical wall?
Yeah, we use a scanner, like can't remember what it's named, but there's this device on the glasses added that sort of real-time tracks with infrared tracks your hands basically. Yeah. Yeah, we tried gloves as well, but then there's this thing on your hand and you can't really touch the surface, and to get to really touch the surface is quite nice. Shall we conclude? Yeah? So yeah, I mean, if you want to see and learn more, you can go to my website. There's a lot of clips there, and I hope you all come to Blankout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.